Welcome to Only for Your Ears and today's episode. But before we begin, I'd like to give a big thanks to people that have liked, shared, and subscribed. This is very much appreciated. Now for episode 51, Two Brothers by Hans Christian Andersen, which I've renamed as Blood Ties, the Unbreakable Bond. The structure will remain the same, starting off with a summary where I'll highlight the most important sentences and digress and give a brief reflection. Then we'll move on to my critical review on how this fairy tale plays in society using parallels from the recent film of Esau and Jacob. And then, last but not least, we'll do the trigger points, which will be some negative and some positive. These are trigger points that triggered me and how I responded to the story. And then we'll close with my quote. So let's begin with Two Brothers, or Blood Ties, the Unbreakable Bond, is a fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen that tells the story of two brothers who embark on separate journeys in life. The elder brother is hardworking, honest, and kind, while the younger brother is selfish, deceitful, and lazy. I digress. The eldest child is always expected to bear the weight of the firstborn and take on responsibility because they are expected to be the leader amongst the rest of the children. The youngest is usually spoilt because they are perceived as needed to be protected and looked after. The elder brother goes out into the world to make his fortune and encounters various obstacles along the way. I digress. The self-starter of the family is aching to prove himself because, after all, that's what the eldest is supposed to do. Despite the challenges, he remains steadfast in his morals, helping those in need and staying true to his values. I digress. This is the typical lead by example, so he can be a role model to his brother. His kindness and honesty earn him the love of a beautiful princess who he eventually marries, and he becomes a prosperous and respected king. I digress. What a lovely and beautiful legacy he's created for himself. The younger brother is envious of his elder sibling success, decides to seek his fortune as well. I digress. It didn't occur to the youngest son to get up and carve out a life for himself until he got jealous of his brother. However, instead of relying on hard work and honesty, he resorts to deceit and trickery. I digress. The trickster of the family, relying on his smarts and charm to obtain nefarious gains. He encounters a series of challenges and misadventures, but rather than learning from his mistakes, he sinks deeper into his wicked ways. I digress. He doesn't want to do the work. It takes character and courage to look at yourself and realize your mistakes. The best lessons are often the most difficult to learn. I so agree. Eventually, the younger brother finds himself in a dire situation, and the elder brother, despite their differences, comes to his rescue. I digress. The younger brother is experiencing an identity crisis. He feels he needs to be bad in order to be different from his brother. The younger brother, realizing the error of his ways, seeks forgiveness and redemption. I digress. With realization and redemption of the younger brother, he has cleaned the slate and is ready to discover himself. In the end, the two brothers reconcile, and the younger brother learns the value of honesty, hard work, and strong moral values. I digress. The older brother leads by example and guides his brother to lead himself. The younger brother's course correction his actions and receives redemption from God and Spirit. The story concludes with the brothers returning to their homeland and living out their days in peace and harmony, having learned the important life lessons from their respective journey. I digress. Life lessons provide us with knowledge, understanding, and maturity to proceed in a friendship and relationship with a sibling we once had difficulty with. It's an interesting story, and this can happen in real life. My critical review on how this fairy tale plays in today's society. The fairy tale brings an authentic tone of what a lot of families experience with their children, a sense of rivalry which can be unmatched out in society at times. I think it has to do with the bloodline and favoritisms expressed from one child to another. That's why I don't care for favoritism at all. I believe that parents should treat their children equally. And if they have stronger feelings for one, keep it to yourself. Keep it close to your chest. I also feel this display of preference for one or the other can be manipulative and at times provoke jealousy, which can lead to quite a life-threatening situations, or at least damaging acts amongst the children concerned. In this fairy tale, the jealousy factor is acted out from the younger brother to the eldest, which is evident as he paves his own way in life and garners success. He is a leader, and as the firstborn has a sense of responsibility the youngest doesn't normally have to bear on their shoulders. The self-starter needs to prove themselves as a man or woman, while the youngest is considered cute, gentle, and very protected, and a very protected soul. However, this isn't always the case in some families. There can be role reversals depending on the family dynamics, which is present starting from the parents. Let's take a look at the story of Esau and Jacob from the Bible in a recent film. The biblical book of Genesis, which was made into a film, speaks of the relationship between fraternal twins, Jacob and Esau, sons of Isaac and Rebekah. The story focuses on Esau's loss of his birthright to Jacob and the conflict that ensued between their descendant nations because of Jacob's deception of their aged and blind father Isaac in order to receive Esau's birthright blessing from Isaac. This conflict was paralleled by the affection the parents had for their favorite child. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Even since conception, their conflict was foreshadowed, and the children struggled together within her body. And she said, if it to be so, why am I in this situation? And she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. In Genesis, it states Esau was born before Jacob, who came out holding on to his older brother's heel, as if he was trying to pull Esau back into the womb so that he could be firstborn. This is how competitive Jacob was. The name Jacob means to grasp the heel, which is a Hebrew idiom for deceptive behaviors. Jacob's story reminds us of the importance of authenticity. For years, Jacob lived as a deceiver, always pretending to be someone he wasn't. But true transformation and blessing came only when he was willing to acknowledge his true self. Isn't that always the way? When you're a phony and you show a phony face to society all the time, in the end, you have to step into the true person. Genesis tells of Jacob and Esau's eventual reconciliation. Jacob sends multiple waves of gifts to Esau to resolve the squabble and the deceit that they have as they approach each other, hoping that Esau will spare his life. Esau refuses the gifts as he is now very wealthy and does not need them, but they do reconcile in the end. And there is a respect. I don't know if there's a love, but there's a true respect in the end. Let's look at the trigger points. Now, the story of Esau and Jacob triggered me because a few years before my mother died, she would tell my sister and I on separate occasions what she would leave in her will, which I found to be inappropriate. She was playing her last hand at poker, a power move to see who would get most of her valuables, which by law should be passed on to my sister and her daughter. She had been manipulative from before I was born by getting pregnant the second time to trap my father to stay in a marriage he didn't want to. My mother was a narcissist. And because my birth was the beginning to the end of their marriage, I spent my whole life apologizing for my very existence. My narcissistic mother secretly blamed me for the marital disaster that she experienced. It was sickening. And after her death, I heard nothing about this will. Unfortunately, there was probably nothing much to be shared around. And the same thing happened in the story of Esau and Jacob. Many real-life families that experience this today, with many families, it has nothing to do with love. All they see is based on who it was that's left the amount of money and deceased by the parent. It has nothing to do with love at all. Love shouldn't be a competition, period. This only takes place with unhealed, toxic people who unfortunately don't love themselves. I'm so grateful that God taught me how to love and pour into my cup by investing in myself. So when my mother died, it didn't hurt so much. The only thing that saddened me was that she couldn't love her children because she suffered from self-loathing, which most narcissists do. My second trigger, well, my relationship with my sister has been painful till this very day. I was born when she was 7 years old, and so there was a big gap. And I guess she felt I took the thunder or the light from her in center stage as a child. Both my parents used my sister and I as a weapon of war in their hateful divorce. So we were enemies from the start. And we have never got to have a relationship with each other without our parents being reflected in our lives through these blood ties, our looks, etc. It's difficult to be two individuals without an entangled history. Our connection is not bad, but it's not good either, which is a shame. This is what happens when parents use their children as rivals and to sort out their problems. And what's even worse, They never take responsibility in tearing the children's relationships apart. And just to touch upon, I find myself thinking about Elton John, a very, very famous British artist, he was an incredible child, an absolutely incredible child. But his parents used their hate for each other and they projected it onto him. And they got a divorce. And so he grew up feeling completely unloved. If you see the film Rocket Man, it's so painful. And there's a wonderful moment at the end where he's in the drug rehabilitation center and he walks into this room and, metaphorically speaking, all his parents are there. And little Reginald, which is Elton when he was small, speaks to him and he says, "Aren't you going to give me a hug, Reginald?" And he walks over to the little boy and he says, "I'm not Reginald anymore. Reginald is all gone now. I'm a different person." And it was really sad because his parents had to finally admit the reason why he turned out to be the way that he really was had nothing to do with him being weird or strange or different or stupid. It had everything to do with their hate that they had for each other, and they could not love their own child. So here's the ending of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll close with my typical quote. Healing is a lifelong blessing, gift, and lesson we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Healing is a lifelong lesson, blessing, and gift we give ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Until next time, thank you.